Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation on the historical day of October 7th, 2023, where we are calling it the first live stream of genocide that took place for the world to see. Since then, there has been thousands of lives lost on both sides, from Israel as well as persons from Gaza, Palestinians. And with us this morning in our first segment and continuing the conversation is Asad Shoman. He is a historian and also a former Foreign Affairs representative as well. Mr. Shoman, we have laid an extensive foundation leading up to October 7th. We've spoken about the history, we've spoken about the living situation on the Gaza Strip. Now, take us to the date, October 7th, the tensions that would have risen from centuries before, from Palestinians, and the history from Israel of survival. Talk to us about what would have taken place on this particular date.
Okay. So first of all, let me say that the 7th of October, as many have said, happened. It didn't happen in a vacuum. There was a context. Many reports that came out, they say an unprovoked attack by Hamas, right? Remember that word, unprovoked? It was used a lot in the early days, right? Let me just refer you, for example, to an earlier date in 2023, because the image we have is that everything was quiet, everybody living good, and then these terrible people, Hamas just out of nowhere, they come and they kill up people, right? On the 2nd of May, 2023, the same year, a guy by the name of Kader Adnan died after 87 days of a hunger strike in a prison, an Israeli prison, where he was held under administrative detention. That's tens of thousands. In fact, they say that from 67 to now, over 1 million Palestinians have been imprisoned, right? Like mass incarceration that challenges the mass incarceration policy of the United States of America. But he died, and then there was a reaction from Hamas, although he was not a Hamas fighter, he was from a different group. And then the Israelis began to bomb, right? And they do the same thing. They bomb and they say, oh, we're going after 3 of their leaders. So 3 of the leaders died and 30 other people dead and so on. So what I'm trying to get to you is that this thing, let me read, can I read something from
Absolutely.
There is this Israeli historian, he's a journalist, Israeli journalist, right? Who has been covering the Gaza war. He's a Jew, works in Israel with a newspaper. He's been covering it for decades, and he wrote this book called The Killing of Gaza, Reports on a Catastrophe. It's a very interesting book. I recommend it to you because what it does, it reproduces his accounts he starts at 2014, just because he can't go back forever, no? His accounts that he published 2014, 2015, just so that year by year. And you get a feeling of what it was like.
And this is an Israeli journalist.
It's an Israeli.
Which is quite interesting as well.
Just by the title.
Right. And then he's referring now to this 2023 incident, where because this happened, and there was a little retaliation, rockets, and so the Israelis came down heavy, and they had a virtual all-out war, though it lasted not as long. He wrote, Netanyahu decided Tuesday to be Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, Ehud Olmert, and Ehud Barak, all former leaders, right? He would bomb, battered, besieged, and impoverish Gaza because that's what Israel wants. Sometimes it's hard to understand how a state can persist in conducting the same idiotic failed policy time after time, government after government, learning nothing and also forgetting nothing. Was there a single war in Gaza that did anyone any good except the lords of war? Was there one bombing, one targeted killing that solved anything? Then he says, do you really want to go on living like this? He's writing to the Israeli people. Living by the sword, war after war, one more unnecessary than the one before, all of them wars of choice, Israel's choice, with no future and no purpose. This is the 17th operation in Gaza in 19 years. A war almost every year. Sometimes, like in 2004, even 2 wars in 1 year. So what I want you to understand is that there has been a series
Of attacks?
of wars. This one is the latest one and the biggest one.
Yeah.
But it's not the only one. So Gaza has been bombed many times, 5 major bombings. Operation Cast Lead, Operation Protective Edge. They give all kind of names to these operations. But what is involved is killing people. So they have a policy, these Israeli governments, and not just Netanyahu, you know, all the leaders from the beginning until now. And whoever, if anybody replaces Netanyahu, they will have the same policy, because a settler colonial situation demands the extermination of the native. If you are going to have your own land for yourself, you have to get rid of those who are there. Either by expelling them, as they've done many times, like in this war now, something like, I think, 400,000 Gazans have been expelled from Gaza, although, you know, here I do not see. I get these facts, by the way, from Jewish intellectuals. This latest fact is from a guy named Norman Finkelstein, whose mother and father were in concentration camps.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And he's saying Gaza is a concentration camp.
Yeah.
He said, my mother would never have condemned Hamas for breaking out, because he describes October 7th as a breaking out of people imprisoned in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
Many people, many Jews, have heard, compare it to the Warsaw Ghetto uprising.
In the international call by some countries for a ceasefire,
Right.
there's also been a call for Palestinians to declare disdain for what took place on October 7, 2023. Is it your view that Palestinians should take that position,
Absolutely.
given all that they've went through?
Obviously not. I mean, a lot of people celebrated the fact that here is a country so powerful as Israel, and so powerful also because it is allowed to do what it wants in the world.
Mm-hmm.
When Belize went before the International
Court of Justice.
Court of International, what's it called? ICJ, International Court of Justice, earlier this year, to support.
You are there representing Belize, correct?
Yeah, right, and other lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Lawyers. We said something like this: impunity breeds inhumanity, right? And there's no country that has enjoyed impunity in the world like Israel. It can do anything. It can cross any red lines, that the so-called red lines, and it will have the support of the United States, and therefore it cannot be punished. Right?
I want to spend some time on the international response of this war that has been taking place over the course of a year. We've seen there's an obvious support and alliance from the United States on Israel's side. But there are also other countries who have supported Hamas and Gaza as well. One of the countries that we brought up was Lebanon, and perhaps their interest in this as well. Let's talk about that, because they've also been recently impacted by bombing as well.
You mean the Lebanese?
Yes.
The Lebanon. Okay, well, in Lebanon, what happened was, you have to go back to 1982, not to go back any further. When they had this massive war in Israel invaded Lebanon, bombed Beirut, bombed all over the place, as it is doing now, and participated, for example, or allowed, facilitated one of the worst massacres in history, which is the Shatra and Shatila refugee camps. The refugees of Palestinians, as I told you, some of them were in Lebanon. And they allowed the Christian militias of Lebanon to go in there and massacre people. That was overseen by Ariel Sharon, who was then defense minister of. So get the picture now. So Sharon allows that to happen, and it's public knowledge. In fact, in Israel, there's a commission of inquiry on it, and they say this man is responsible for this thing, and therefore he does not deserve to be a minister, and he's removed as a minister. A few years later, he's elected by the people of Israel to be president of Israel.
Wow.
Sorry, prime minister. to be Prime Minister of Israel, like Netanyahu is now, right? So what is happening here is a very disturbing thing, especially seen now, that the vast majority of Israeli citizens and people support the killing of Palestinians, support apartheid, because they have been trained and brought up to hate.
It's
this is another thing.
them.
We brought this out in our presentation to the ICJ. We showed, even by UN people, but even from Israeli people, like officials, who had gone into the schools and said the curriculum of the school is very, very bad because it teaches hate. It teaches them to hate people, right? So that is widespread. And sometimes you say, oh, the German people didn't know that, that they were killing millions of Jews, but Israelis know what is happening. And they support it.
In a situation where two parties are at war, and in this case multiple parties, what makes Israel's actions be considered war crimes or in contravention of international law in the context of what is taking place in Gaza?
Right. Well, as you know, these war crimes are forgiven or papered over by a lot of people a lot of states in the international community, and our people. Principally the United States, very much so the United Kingdom, very much so Germany, for all these white ex-colonial countries that themselves were colonizers, right?
Now, when you say papered over, you mean ignored?
Not ignored, justified. They said they have a right to defend themselves.
Okay.
So Israel goes and bombs a neighborhood, kills 50 children with one blow, right? With that 2,000-pound bomb that's given to them by the United States of America.
This is facts.
And they say Israel has a right to defend
They're
itself.
defending themselves.
Yeah.
And the U.S. also supports that.
Of course.
I want to touch really briefly on, as I mentioned, the alliance of the Hezbollah, a Lebanese armed group, expressing solidarity with Hamas, but also Iran inserting themselves in the conversation, publicly supporting Hamas's action and framing them as legitimate resistance against Israel's occupation.
Right.
Mr. Showman, if we see one of these large countries like Iran entering the space where war is taking place, and we have the United States that has also formed an alliance with the opposing group, is this something that we should be amping up our concern about, that there's a potential possibility of another world war?
Well, of course, yeah. You should be worried because Israel is a nuclear power. That is not said very often.
And so is Iran.
Well, we don't know. It may be, right?
Speculations.
It may be. But we know that Israel is a nuclear power, although it is not admitted officially. Now, how did it become a nuclear power? Somebody had to have. I mean, in this case, it was not so much directly the United States, although they were part of it, but France that facilitated Israel becoming a nuclear power, right? At the same time that Israel was supporting apartheid in South Africa, at the same time that South Africa had nuclear weapons, which was, of course, taken away when the black people became rulers of the country, right? They were a nuclear power as well, and Israel and South Africa worked very closely together, supporting each other's because apartheid has existed in Israel from 1948, right? It's only now become a buzzword, and because so many big organizations, United Nations, and now the Court of Justice have said, yes, there is apartheid in Israel. And so I don't know how people like us in Belize can't feel rage, against a country that practices apartheid so openly. And Bishop Tutu, who was one of the big fighters for justice in South Africa, visited there, and he said this is worse than in South Africa. So,
wow.
Yeah, so in Belize's context, one would ask, what more can Belize do, or Belizeans do, to show solidarity and support. We've suspended ties with Israel. We've shown support at the ICJ. I know the ICJ has made a ruling that Israel seems to disregard completely.
Yeah.
And then a week ago, we issued another press release calling for a ceasefire and then an end to this violence where some 41,000 Palestinians have been killed, and this includes women and children.
Of course. Mostly.
Tens of thousands of women and children. But being so far away, what can we do, or what more can we do without feeling a sense of hopelessness for these people that are losing their lives on a daily basis?
Yeah. Well, we haven't done very much. No? We've done more than a lot of CARICOM countries. We've done more than a lot of countries in the world, really, simply by doing the things that you just mentioned, right? Just yesterday, somebody wrote to me, WhatsApp, and said, "Don't you think it's time that we have another march, I said, I don't know. I mean, you decide, because it's your thing, I'm not supposed to. I don't organize these things. I don't even live here. But people in Belize, I think, are torn because of the religious component that is injected into the situation, which has nothing to do with religion. This is a colonial situation, I repeat, right? And an apartheid situation, and an occupation situation, right? Religion has nothing to do with it. But we have this, religion is a part of the Zionist movement, because Zionism actually started with Christians saying the end of the world will come when the Jews go back, they say, to Israel, and then we'll have the second coming of Jesus Christ, the only Jew that they like, because the rest must die if they don't convert to Christianity, right? So they're anti-Semites. They don't want Jews except Jesus Christ, right? And they say, well, that's why we have to support Israel, because the Bible says that the land belongs to them, right? So that sounds a bit mad, I know, but a lot of people believe it, right? And when they believe it, then they feel. Religion is a thing that, once you get it, it's deep and it's strong, and
it's engraved.
You get blinded to anything else, right? Yeah. Even to the facts that are staring you in the face. So these people who are good people, who don't believe in murder, who don't believe that children should be dismembered, but because Israel is doing it, they say, well, God must be on their side.
So you clearly have that divide in Belize, but putting religion aside, as you rightly put it into context, let me go back to Gaza to ask, what about the hostages, the hostage situation on both sides?
Right.
Shouldn't the Palestinians release hostages that have been in captivity since October 7th? I know that there are many families in Israel that are still waiting for the release of their loved ones. And I say that, and I ask that while I think about the suffering that the Palestinians have also undergone for decades as well. And so I see where personally there's internal conflict within myself as well, right, with this topic. But I still pose the question.
No, there's no question that the hostages should be released on both sides, as you see, right? So I believe that it is wrong to take civilians as hostages. Remember that the 7th of October was basically a military operation. I described to you the sealing off of Gaza with walls, with all the electronics and things, high-tech seal off, and somehow these people, impoverished, under siege for so many years, managed to fool all of the electronic devices, break through the wall in about 40 different places, and take take Israel by surprise. How is that possible? That's an amazing feat, right?
One of the questions that are being posed online, and I'm trying to engage our viewers as well, is how comes weapons made their way into Hamas if Israel controlled the entry and exit?
Right. But before I get that, can I answer
Yeah,
this question?
certainly.
So yes, I believe that not just Hamas, but the other groups that are holding hostages in Gaza should release those hostages, right? They should never have been taken in the first place. Military, yes, but not civilians. I believe that Israel, that is holding thousands of Palestinians hostage, has an equal, no less duty to release those hostages. They call them prisoners, although they never had a trial, most of them, right? But not only are they imprisoned, they are tortured, they are raped as a part of their punishment. That is certified by the United Nations. They can't say the same thing about the hostages that Hamas and other groups have. In fact, the ones that were released, remember, a couple of them were saying how nice they were being, and they quickly were shut up and so on. And then, of course, that is added to the lies that the media tells. You know, a lot of the problem here is not just the governments, you know, but the media. And our media in Belize has to look at itself as well and say, well, what am I doing to stop these lies or to promulgate them? You know? So the media has a lot to do with where we are today and where people are thinking today.
Yes.
That's your question.
So the question from a viewer is,
come back to yours,
how do weapons
how did the
make
weapons, Well, you know, in any situation like this, like, you know, a lot of people have compared this breakout of the concentration camp to a slave revolt, because in effect these people are like slaves. So you had the famous Nat Turner rebellion in the United States, and somehow these people had weapons, although they were slaves. There are always ways. There are always ways of getting it from the occupier, of smuggling it one way or another. They had tunnels for a while working.
with the wall?
With the wall, all of that, you know. So people fighting for their lives have a way of getting hold. They don't have the kind of weapons that Israel has, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Very primitive weapons compared, you know, but something. And a lot. Let me say just for a moment, the Warsaw Ghetto. I want you to understand that the Warsaw Ghetto was in Poland, controlled by the Germans. It was a concentration camp, in effect, of Jews, right, who were there in a holding pattern on the way to extermination, to the gas chambers, right? And there was a rebellion there, what they call the Warsaw Uprising, right? And the Jews that were there, they came out, they broke through the barriers. They knew that they could not win because the overpowering might of the German army was such that it was impossible to win. But they knew they were going to die anyhow, man, so they preferred to die fighting. And that's what's happening in Gaza. They know they're going to die. They're set up to die. When they're under siege, nothing can come in. And when a flotilla came from Europe, several ships bringing food and so on, they were stopped by the Israeli army. 9 of them were killed. Nothing happened. Nobody. There were reports after reports after reports, but no punishment, no accountability. So Israel has learned it can get away with anything, so it can do anything. I don't know how long we're going to support that. And Belize has a role to play
definitely
in the international community, in standing up for self-determination, especially for the rights of the Palestinians,
in the UN,
against genocide, against apartheid. And we are hoping that Belizeans will support their government when it does things like that.
Mr. Showman, this has been a wonderful conversation, a very educational conversation. I have to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us so early this morning. We appreciate the knowledge that you have shared with myself, Paul, as well as our viewers by extension, and we hope to have you back very soon.
I noticed that our viewers were locked in.
They were.
And very engaged in the conversation.
Of course, mixed reviews, but I think this comes with the territory. This is a very controversial topic,
yes.
But I think years from now, perhaps centuries from now, we hope not, we will be able to have a better understanding and really recognize what the situation was without biases in that conversation as well.
And just to say that the conversation continues, because this hasn't ended, this continues, and so the conversation
and the war continues.
And that's what I'm saying. And so your role is very important here in Belize, Mr. Showman. And so congratulations and thank you once again.
Thank you too, and thank you viewers as well. Yeah.
All right, so with that, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, it's all about a quartz sale that you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.